Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. This is the first in a series of clinics that the Potomac Division is doing this year on the NMRA's Achievement Program. And we thought we'd begin with a general introduction to what the program's all about. It's actually the Achievement Program, something a very small part of our membership participates in. We have 220 members here in Potomac, and only 58 have any AP certificates at all. Of those 58, we have 18 living MMRs, Master Model Railroaders. So why are there so few participants in the program? Some comments. Well, I'm sure most of you have heard a lot about the AP program, whether you're already working on it or just starting out. And no doubt you've heard complaints, so let's get them out on the table right away. Let's address some of the main issues. People hate being judged. Will it make it more fun? No. AP is pushing me to do work I wouldn't want to do. There are procedural obstacles. I don't want to have to write a doctoral dissertation. And by the way, I've seen a few layouts belonging to master model railroaders that are downright awful. Well, there's some misconceptions about this. First, and probably the most important, is the fact that this is not a popularity contest. You're not competing with other modelers when you have your models evaluated. As one person said, found on the internet, merit award judging really isn't a me versus him contest. It's me versus me. And that means I always come out the winner. One of the biggest myths involves the paperwork. And later this year, we'll have a clinic about that. But our AP coordinator right now, Martin Breckbiel, says he's heard nothing but complaints for more than 20 years about paperwork. And he thinks most of these things are unfounded. Unfortunately, it has taken on mythology that's far, far worse than the reality. So let me tell you what I believe. And let me point out, this is a diorama by our colleague and friend, Greg Cassidy. It's a diorama. It's 2 feet by 2 feet square, piece of foam insulation. And this is an ON18. That's O scale running on N gauge track. And you'll see a few more outtakes from this diorama as we go along. Here's what I believe. First of all, you want to get better, right? How many of you have tried golf and then given it up, or any other sport or activity? But you don't want to give up model railroading. You've been involved in model railroading since you were a kid. You've loved it. And you're not going to give it up now. So, how do you get better? You want to be better, don't you? Well, this is how I got involved in the AP program. I wanted to be a better modeler. I wanted to learn new skills. I wanted to know about the things I didn't know about, and there are a lot of them. Like, what the heck is this? Bullfrog snot. Or this, ground goop. Well, I won't guarantee the AP program will give you all the answers, but it will help. So how do you learn? If you're lucky, your division, your region, like ours, will give you options to go to clinics. This is one of our better known members, Lance Mindheim, well known for his layout building, his commercial layout building, and his layout planning. He gave a clinic here on layouts and how to make them proper. Martin Breckbiel, our current AP manager, has given many clinics. This one that he gave in this picture had to deal with resin casting for small parts. Dale Latham, pictured here, gave a clinic about Southern Maryland railroads. You can learn a lot about the history of the railroading business from attending clinics like this. And we also have workshops at some of our clinics. In this particular one, you see Nigel Phillips, one of our members, was discussing the finer points of turnout making using fast track tools. And in this one, Frank Beninati was discussing how to make trees. This is one of our modelers demonstration workshops. We're fortunate in our division. One of our members, Jerry Stanley, has built an outbuilding on his property he calls the Hobby Barn, where he has held clinics for small groups. And here's Bill Mosteller gave one in which he discussed decals. And here's another one that was also held at the Hobby Barn about building with styrene. As I recall, this was a clinic by Jeff Jordan. The other thing that you can do is go out and see layout open houses and ask questions. This picture shows Greg Cassidy's layout. Here's one from Bill Demas. He is part of an operating group that has met regularly over the years, and he has a marvelous layout for operations. Bernard Kempinski has a magnificent Civil War layout at his home, which is always popular when he has one of his open houses. And then not all layouts are actually complete. In this case, Kelly Regan's layout of Georgetown area is still under construction. But you can learn a lot from seeing how he's doing it, and you can ask questions about what his next plans are and where he's going from there. So like I say, our major meets have clinics, tours, and sales. Last year, we had this meet out in Virginia, a joint meet with the James River Division, which included a modest white elephant sales area. And over on the left, you see a picture of one of the clinics of speed matching run by George Myrick. Another one here, very popular. Greg Cassidy was giving a clinic on painting tips. This involved using isopropyl alcohol and pan pastels to paint small details. Of course, at the regional level, there's an annual convention, and that will include a guest speaker. And you can learn a lot from there, as well as enjoy the socialization with other modelers. And of course, you can always learn a lot to take home and bring back to your workbench and layout. In this particular picture, what you see is a small Cato N-scale power drive, which I'm using to put on 3D printed HO N30 rail bus bodies. And I can show you that one here. I'm working on it right now. So underneath here is the power chassis that you see in that picture. There are a lot of AP categories, and now you don't have to shoot for Master Model Railroader or making all of these certificates, but you might want to think about how you're going to get better. And you might change your mind as you go down the road. There are a lot of categories that you might find appealing to you. And you might just get to the role of Master Model Railroader. Ernie Little, our superintendent, did. I did it several years ago. And in truth, it wasn't something I set out to earn when I joined the NMRA. I wanted to meet other modelers and have a layout in my retirement after years of putting off both desires because of family, work, and travel, including 25 years living overseas. So how did I get there? And what does my experience mean for others? Are you wondering perhaps about the value of pursuing that goal? Or for that matter, working on any of the AP certificates? So let me admit right away, this might not be for everyone. Obviously, you can still enjoy this great hobby. Model railroading is supposed to be fun. So why ruin it by striving for a plaque, you might ask? Or you don't have to. But, and this is what I believe, as a means of developing your skills in model railroading, especially if you're just starting out, or if you've been modeling in isolation, I can't think of a better approach than to follow the AP program. That's what motivated me. I wanted the best layout I could build, and I wanted to learn from those with experience in the hobby. My recommendation, take it step by step at whatever speed your circumstances allow, and start with the areas of modeling that most appeal to you. Your skills will benefit, and I'm convinced your enjoyment of the hobby will increase because your layout and your models will be better. So how do you start? Well, start small. Get the golden spike. Greg Cassidy will be giving a clinic about that later. Then come the AP categories. There are 11 of them in all. In my case, since I enjoyed scenery and structure building, they were the first master builder certificates I received after starting my layout. Used a lot of foam, a lot of plaster cloth, and soon a landscape emerged, and we had scenery. Now, where are you going to start? That's the question. You don't have to go all the way to MMR, but you want to get better. So where do you start? What are you going to do? Do you like to build models? Since I like scenery and structure building, as I said, those are the first certificates I started with. And that's my first experience meeting with the NMRA evaluators. My scenery met the requirements easily, but my structures, especially my trestle bridge, needed more work and a better understanding of what was needed to deserve a merit score. And that was a huge, very positive learning experience. And importantly, it enabled me to improve my trestle and my other models and nail down that structure certificate. That's a post office I made. This is a model of magnificent model of a Civil War era engine house that was made by Bernard Kempinski, and it took best of show at the last Middle East region convention. Greg Cassidy had one of his structures here on cover of NMRA magazine. This little structure I call Wilder's Wagon Works was one of the ones I submitted for my structures AP. It was a scratch-built building based on a barn that I saw in the ghost town of Bodie, California. And this is another one of my models of Drake's oil well with my Densmore tank car in the foreground. I enjoy making small dioramas, and this one enabled me to put together a number of things that I had been working on. And here's the trestle I was talking about. And, you know, sometimes you'll come across something that really interests you. One of my sons bought a house near Woodsboro, Maryland. And up there, as I went to his house, I saw this old station. It used to be the Woodsboro train station. And I went in, it's now the home of the local historical society. And I discovered that back in the early 1900s, Goldsboro was the biggest exporter of goldfish in the United States. And they were all shipped out from this train depot in special canisters that looked much like enlarged milk cans. That led to not only building a model of the Woodsboro of the station, but a series of articles I wrote for the MER newsletter, the local. And it actually led me to contribute an article to a Calmback publication called Building What's in a Photo. And it led to my prototype model certificate because I put it together with a diorama using archival photos from the Historical Society with the way things looked around the depot in 1905, including the structures that are in this picture, which are no longer there or have been heavily modified. Now, people talk about cars being the toughest, absolutely hardest AP certificate to get. And most of them tend to leave it for the last requirement before achieving Master Model Railroader. I had no such problem. I built a couple cars that were in my prototype model display. And then I decided I wanted to add a couple things. The Densmore tank cars, which met my interest in early Pennsylvania oil wells. And then because my layout depicts Nevada and the Old West, I decided to build a couple of the Denver and Rio Grande Western narrow gauge rail and MOW cars. One is a rail and tie car, and the one here closest is a wheel and tie car. And there are the Densmore tank cars. Those are scratch built, several hundred pieces of wood in each one. And then I also built a railway post office using a label kit that I had to modify to meet the specifications of the original Pennsylvania car. This one I ended up super detailing. There's a full interior with mail slots, a mailman. I even had little bits of paper to look like letters. And you can see the guy standing out by the mail hook. Doing this might not be for you. You can still have fun. It's a great hobby. Why ruin it by striving for some plaque? You don't have to. But if you want to develop your skills in model railroading, especially if you started out in isolation like I did, I can't think of a better way of doing it than through the AP program. I wanted the best layout I could build, and I wanted to learn from those with experience in the hobby. So before we proceed, take it step by step at whatever speed your circumstances allow. And a lot of people don't have all the free time that a retiree might have. And start with the areas of modeling that most appeal to you, and your skills will benefit. So we've discussed starting with the golden spike, and there are, though, 11 AP categories. And in my case, since I always enjoyed making scenery and building structures, that's where I started. And that was my first interaction with the Potomac Division's evaluators. And my scenery met the expectations and requirements, but my structures, especially a trestle bridge I built, needed more work and a better understanding of what was deserving of a merit score. And that was a huge and very valuable learning experience for me. Most importantly, it enabled me to improve my trestle and other models and nail down that particular certificate. Now, there are some classic examples of structures. This is Bernard Kempinski's engine house, which took Best in Show at last year's MMR convention. And this is one that Greg Cassidy built that was actually featured in NMRA magazine. And this is another one of mine that went to my structures AP certificate. It's a model. I got the plans for it when I went out to Bodie, California, and visited this amazing ghost town. And this was the county barn, which I've adapted as a wagon works. And I've begun moving towards dioramas. This is one that I built for a depiction of an early Pennsylvania oil well. The structure of the well itself was a long out of production kit of Drake's oil well, which was one of those classic box of sticks kits. And there's the trestle I was telling you about. The other thing that caught my eye was one of my sons bought a house up in Woodsboro, Maryland. And that station that you see there was the original Woodsboro train station. And I thought it made a neat little model. And since he lived just about 100 yards away, I thought I would make it for him. And I discovered that the structure was being used by the Woodsboro Historical Society for preservation of local memorabilia. And what I discovered when I went in and looked at some of their records was that this used to be the area around Woodsboro, Thurmont, used to be the major export of the area was goldfish. It had something to do with the metal or the stuff that's in the water of the ponds up in that area. It gave the goldfish a brighter hue. So this not only led to my building a model, but writing an article about fish, something that catches your eye. And maybe as you're considering what you want to build for a structure or an article you might want to write, find something that catches your eye, because there are lots of things that are around. There's the model I made of the Woodsboro Depot. And that actually appeared in a Calmback book called What's in a Photo, along with a couple other guys from our Potomac Division had little articles in that book. It ended up becoming, the station became part of an overall diorama, which included scratch-built structures that were there around the turn of 1900, 1905 era. Some of the structures are no longer there, and others no longer look like they do in today. Eventually, everybody will get to talking about the cars AP, where you're required to make 4 cars, scratch-built cars. And it seems to me that might fall under one of those myths that Martin Breckbiel was talking about, that this is the hardest thing and people leave it for last. Our most recent MMR, who just got it, Bill Leiders, his last project was getting his cars AP and getting that last car to get a merit award to qualify him for it. Having built 3 super detailed cars for the Woodsboro diorama, I decided, because I also had a kind of an interest in those early Pennsylvania oil wells, that I would make early Densmore tank car models. And for some reason, because I've always had a fascination with the Old West, and my layout deals with Nevada mining operation, I decided I'd build a couple Denver and Rio Grande Western MOW cars. The ones in this picture are a rail and tie car and a wheel and tie car. And they're the Densmore tank cars that I built. And back in the Woodsboro diorama, back in the days I did my prototype AP certificate, you were required to make either a passenger car or a caboose. And in this case, I was allowed to make a railway post office car. This was a LaBelle wooden kit that I had to modify to get the proper window placement to depict an early Pennsylvania RPO car. And there are all the cars I took to be evaluated. This was during COVID, and I took them down to a former AP coordinator's house in a box, unloaded them, presented them for him, and at his leisure, he arranged to have other evaluators come over, and they evaluated all these cars. So everybody met with masks and gloves, and the first 4 cars the evaluators looked at, the 2 Densmores, one of the 2 MOW cars, and the RPO all got the merit awards, and I qualified for my cars AP. And that left me with, I knew I was going to get the volunteer certificate for the work I put in on the flyer and on the regional newsletter. So I had to do something in the area of the engineering track. And since my layout has all manual switches and no signals or lighting for that, I had no option really but to go for the civil engineering certificate. And the requirements, most of them are pretty easy. Have a track plan, um, how you would modify it, and you also have layout features. And these were things that I wanted either had or I wanted to install in my particular layout, in this case, an ash pit, an inspection pit, uh, an old turntable. But then my hang up was the hand laid track. And I really struggled with that, frankly. I couldn't get my switches to work properly. And I had to keep working at it and keep getting trial and error to figure things out. And eventually, I managed to make the 3 features that were required, and that was it. So I was very glad to get that out of the way. But I decided, as part of this whole learning skill, and you may find this, you may not. I thought it would be a challenge to try and make my own engines. And for the certificate for motive power, you need to make 3 locomotives, one of which has to be scratch built. And that's why you see a lot of scratch built rail cars, small diesel switchers. I made a motor freight from a kit and used the power chassis of a diesel switcher to build my own critter. But for my scratch built project, I insanely thought I would make a vertical boiler climax. And that's the one you can see right there. The water tank up front is actually one of those, what do you call them? They sometimes come in pills to keep the contents dry. The boiler was made from a cigar tube that I cut down, a metal cigar tube. And the smokestack, my wife was throwing out some cake icing tips, which I put together to create that. And there's the critter. This was what was AHM Hustler, and I just threw away the body and reversed the direction of the build here to build this all out of wood on top of it. This was a kit from Conowingo Motor Models. This is the motor freight. Originally, it was designed to be built on top of a Bachmann 40-tonner power chassis. I ended up putting mine on Stanton drives, one dummy and one powered Stanton drive, which worked much better and freed up the interior of it for me. So with all of that and all of your experiences, you might think about being a writer and writing for your newsletter. I professionally was a writer for my entire career, and now I'm very pleased to oversee the production of the Potomac Flyer, our newsletter. And I always encourage people to write for us because we need articles. I've written for NMRA Magazine and also for the local, the Middle Eastern region's newsletter. So over my shoulder is what you see in that picture there. That's my layout. And I'm thinking, what am I going to do now? I'm really at that stage where I'm thinking about tearing up what's behind me, maybe making series of small dioramas like the one you saw at the beginning of the clinic that Greg Cassidy had done, 2x2 square. I'm not sure. I like making modules, and I'm thinking about then what can I do with them eventually and hand them out to people as gifts. The Woodsboro diorama I'm probably going to give to the Woodsboro Historical Society if my son doesn't want to keep it in his own house. He can also take these things lightweight to meets and so on, and that can be useful. We all eventually have to think about what to do, what to say, when to start. I get intimidated when I go and visit someone's layout and he has, a 40 by 60 layout running throughout 5 rooms in his basement. And I'm wondering, my God, what's going to happen to all that stuff? But as far as the AP is concerned, I'm finished at that stage. I don't have any more certificates to seek, but I do believe that my participation has opened up a lot of doors for me, and it has made me a better modeler. So my final recommendations, if you're not involved in the AP program, is just go step by step at whatever your circumstances allow. Start with the areas of modeling that interest and appeal to you. Don't let somebody else tell you what to do. And keep learning. Go to clinics, meets, lay out open houses, and have as much fun as you possibly can. And that's my story. I'm sticking to it. And I hope it was somewhat enlightening. And that if you take anything from it, maybe you'll decide to shoot for one of the AP certificates. So thanks very much.
Alex, you made some good points. I'll add in, if you don't mind, a little bit about my trip to the MMR. And I started in, I think it was 2002. And I finished in 2019. And yes, there were times when I got out of working on the AP program because I was disappointed in myself. When I got into the cars, I was having a little bit of fit of learning the difference between building a car and building a car that could get a merit score. And it was interesting. The bottom line for me is, and I think that something I would stress, if you have friends who are interested in doing the AP program, I would certainly encourage getting your friends involved. I can look at a trio that was in the Potomac Division that were part of the group of 10 that I started in 2002 that worked on it. And they got together to build cars, and they met at one of the individuals' home once a week, all day. And then for the next week and a half, the host would clean up all the pieces of plastic off the floor, everything from the mess they had. They ended up with a lot of leftover styrene from the car builds. But I found that having friends helps you to support you, just like in anything that you deal with. I think another point that I would make is that always try to make progress and don't let a failure to make a merit score bother you. When I was doing the cars AP, I decided for some reason, and I don't understand even as today, why I tried to build 4 cars right off the bat versus building 1 car. Of those 4 cars, 2 of them finally got merit scores after going back through evaluations. One with 2 evaluations, one with 3 evaluations. But I learned a lot by, I say, my failures. I learned what not to do, and I learned what the standards were that they were looking at. And if I can do it, anybody can do it. I'm as I say, a good rough carpenter, but a finished carpenter, I'm not a good finished carpenter. It takes me a lot of time to do finish work. Sometimes, like in the cars AP, the finished carpenter is necessary because you have to learn how to deal with all the details. And The other thing I can say is working through the process, I learned how to build cars. I learned that all cars are basically a flat car, and you build off the flat car, whether it be a box car, passenger car, whatever. Every one of those has a flat car inside of it. Alex was talking about the issues he had with uh, building track and building switches, scratch built. The group that I was in, we went together and bought the fast track system and passed that around, and that got us through that. And we supported each other because the first guy went through learned a lot about what not to do, and the second guy picked up on those bad points and said, "I'm not going to do that because I need to do this." I was fortunate in the fact that what I built worked in terms of turnouts. My biggest challenge was the crossing, but I learned a lot about electricity in building that, in the fact that isolation of the rails when you're going through the crossing, so you don't have a short. Because one of the things you had to do was run an engine through the pieces you built at the time. So those are points I would make. I also learned how to paint cars. I learned how to do scenery. Scenery was crazy to me, but learning how to shake a bottle and get over how to make white glue to put things down, and you have to dilute it a certain way. And if you make it too thick, it don't work. If it's too thin, it's runny. But you learn that by trial and error. And if I didn't try it, I'd never be able to do it. So as Alex said, that's my story, and I'll stick to it.
Yeah, go back to one point. It's interesting. You can actually build structures, use those structures in, say, a prototype model, build cars that go in the prototype model, and then those cars also can contribute to your car's AP certificate. So you can actually combine projects to maximize your ability to earn certificates. I'm delighted Martin's joined us, and Martin can probably address some of the mythology of. He's going to be given a clinic in the future about paperwork. So, Martin, you want to add anything at this stage?
I'll leave the mythology for later. Save that. But I'll go back to one thing that you mentioned about, a place to start is something that you already do well, and optimize that and work from your strengths or something that you enjoy doing, as opposed to, oh, let's jump in at something I hate doing. That's probably not the place to start. And my beginning on this was, strangely enough, was cars. I was a lone wolf for many, many, many years, and I got dragged into the NMRA, kicking and screaming, and sort of thought I'd gone to some not open houses, but the mini conventions and whatever that the division had held back, oh gosh, a long time ago. We will not put the year into it. And I thought, well, maybe I should take something of mine to the contest room just for the heck of it. I mean, how bad can it be? And that was my first merit award. I took one of my flat cars in. Now, you think a flat car can't get a merit award. Yes, it can, but it's when it's made out of about 300 pieces of wood and there's 400 pieces of detail on it, because that's just the way I was doing things. I didn't give it any thought that this was unusual in any way, shape, or form. And then I got a merit award. I got 2 other awards at that same convention for that same car, and I thought, this is part of the AP program. I think I can do this. Maybe I should pursue this. It seems like I'm having fun doing it, and I get a plaque on the wall and people saying how wonderful it is. And I'm like, okay. So, if you start with something you know how to do. I mean, Alex was a professional writer. I'm a professional hack writer. But yeah, I probably have 600, 800 publications if you combine my professional and model railroading publications into one big pot. writing's not hard. It doesn't, it's only as hard as you make it. I think that's one of my other clinics I'll be doing. I mean, it's as hard as you want to make it, but it's actually pretty low hanging fruit, in my opinion. The NMRA is set up to pretty much give that award way to you if you just step up to the plate, and you don't have to hit home runs. Singles, a lot of singles work very well. You can make a career doing that, as I understand it, in professional baseball, in fact. So, there are lots of things you can do. You don't have to do, and yes, there will be things that you don't do well. Very, 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 very few people do everything really well. There are exceptions to that, of course, but we'll ignore those people for now. Everybody has gaps in their experience, expertise, knowledge base, skill level. The skills, by the way, you're not born with them. You acquire them by use and application and practice. I mean, people say, I don't have the skills to do that. So, well, yeah, well, you don't go down and they don't come in a Cracker Jack box. You have to acquire skill. But, there are things that you don't do well. And that's part of the AP program. By the time you're done, you might actually do something pretty good. You surprise yourself. And not only will you learn something if you're not careful, you might actually get a reward for doing it. And you can pat yourself on the back at least and say, hey, I learned something and I'm actually pretty good at it. Who would have thought? And that's part of the entire learning experience for the AP program. It's to self-benefit. You're not there to benefit anybody else. It's to your benefit. So those were all good points that Alex made. And I'm blathering now, so I'll stop.
And I point out that Ernie mentioned the idea of if you have the opportunity, which unfortunately I didn't during the COVID thing, but work with somebody else. And I know Ken Wilson here has been going out and meeting regularly with another one of our members to work on AP projects. Is that right, Ken? Yeah. Do you want to share anything about your work? Not to put you on the spot, but
sure, let me unmute myself. Yeah, it's funny. During COVID, I heard so many people say, wow, what a great opportunity to do some modeling. It wasn't for me. I was working for a school system in sports services, safety office, and I had to keep going to work. So it was kind of a lost opportunity for me. And when I was working, I wasn't carving out the time to really work on stuff. But Jerry Stanley, who made the Hobby Barn during COVID as a venue to present clinics, and eventually he hopes to have a model railroad in there. After meeting at a bunch of his clinics sponsored there, we talked about just getting together to try to work on stuff. So we do, and it's every Thursday evening. We try to knock out 3 or 4 hours there. And it's funny because Jerry always asks me at the end of the evening, well, what did you do? What did you accomplish? And I'll proudly show him 4 little bits of styrene or whatever that look like little fingernail clippings. And he said,
oh, good.
What's that? And I said, I'm not sure what they're called, but I think
very good
draft gear yolks. And sometimes that's all it is. I think having a day-long thing would be pretty cool. I would be up for that, because when I get in the groove of actually doing something, time stands still. I'm not clock watching, other than when Jerry starts to fall asleep and he has to throw me out because he gets up at 5 in the morning to go to work. So it has helped me working together. I agree. Jerry has generously told me that, I keep helping him because he'll be reading the instructions for something and not know what the names of the things are. He was working on a freight car. Well, having gone through at Jerry's demand or request, whichever you want to put it, that I do a clinic on air brake systems, I learned an enormous amount about passenger and freight car brake systems just by trying to put a clinic together. So when I'm working on my car, it makes a whole lot of sense. And if there's something that I don't have in a photograph or a plan, I know by my past experience and research of what is necessary and where that pipe has got to go. And if it's going to get there, how does it cross the center beam of a car? Well, I know from experience there's got to be some holes there. So all of that, like Alex was talking about, all these little bits of information do come together, and actually applying it to make a car, or in my case, I'm trying to make two. I didn't go the whole route like Ernie did, try to move four along at one time. But I'm trying to move two, and I realized I kind of put a real obstacle in front of myself. If I just made one car, um, there's no other car to compare it to. So now that I've got two, they darn well better match up for the things that do match up. There's going to be some details that don't match because they're 2 years apart in the production back in the 30s. So there are differences, and that's why I chose to do both versions. I wasn't sure which one I liked. So I thought, how hard could it be to do two? Then I realized you have to actually have them compare and meet. So my concern is, and Alex had talked about it, you're not competing against anybody else. You're competing against yourself. So I worry after spending on and off years trying to fiddle around with two cars, what happens when I get a score? Will that be the benchmark that I have to meet in the future? Or can I get the foot off the accelerator a little bit and not worry about trying to match myself each time? Because I think now, gee, maybe perhaps I should have just thrown a couple out there for evaluation, and then you can always go uphill from there. So I guess that's a question for you, MMRs, is that if I hit a certain benchmark, is that going to be the expectation from there on out?
Well, it depends. I'll just opine. We all have to approach this step by step at the pace that we set. And maybe there's not a goal at the end of it. Maybe you should be happy with just two cars that you think are beautiful, are perfect. Do you really need to make more? I don't know. It's really what motivates you. Do you want to have a quantity, 4 cars, 8 cars? Do you want to, improve with your next car? I don't know. Anybody else have any thoughts on this?
I was going to add one thing I thought was kind of ironic, is I kind of like the idea of cars. And much like you guys said, start with what you like. Well, I've always enjoyed cars. So that made perfect sense to me. And actually, as long as I've fiddled around with these cars, um, in my mind, I kind of wish that the requirements, the number of models between structures and cars were reversed, because I'd rather do 12 cars and 6 structures than 12 structures and 6 cars. To me, it's like, geez, I'd much rather have, 12 cars, 16 cars, whatever be the requirement. That's a lot of structures, to try to hit merit awards for. So that one has me kind of worried.
No.
Alex, I'll share something here. If I can get this to come up. Can y'all see that? Are you looking at cars?
Nothing's happening, Ernie.
Nothing's, oh, wait a minute. How about now?
Well, there you go.
Okay, so these are the cars that I built in my lake here. In the upper left-hand corner is one of the first. It's made of wood. If I compare that to the Southern Hogshead tobacco car on the second shelf, that first one up there was a disaster, and I realized that after I had it evaluated, I got 55 points on it, and it wasn't going to make merit no matter what I did, because I was going to have to do a lot of things. You see that things aren't square, and it looks pretty rough. If you look at that Southern Hogshead tobacco car, that's styrene, that's scratch built. But that's the best car I built, according to Matt Thompson, who at the time was the Potomac Division's AP coordinator. The one prior to that was the Shopper's Car Line car. And that car there is actually a car that I found plans for. Well, it was an old Ambroid kit. And I took an Ambroid kit and duplicated the parts in the kit. The kit was $5, by the way. and I made it into with styrene. And I thought it came out pretty decently. That was the second highest score I had. That Southern Hogshead Tobacco was 115 points. The Shipper's Car Line was, I think, 105, I recollect right. The lower left is one of my first 4 cars. And one of the things I learned about was you have to think about scale and things like the walls of that gondola, how thick are they supposed to be? Well, for some reason, I decided to use like 0.040 styrene plastic, a little too thick. I need to cut that down, and everything that I had done with it was a little bit too heavy. So it took 3 times to get it through. But what I did each time was I went back to I took everything off, went back to the flat car and built it again. But I was using the comments made by my AP coordinator and also my evaluators as to what needed to be done. On the second shelf from the top, that the water company Chicago, I've seen a lot of people build this car, and I built it, and it's a piece of 1-inch dowel with basswood. It was put on it by gluing. Then there's some plastic there, but everything there is scratch built. Yes, commercial trucks, but everything else was cut, and that was one of the ones that I made of wood. The upper right, that Reading Company car, that's a kit, Bethlehem kit, and it's a combine. And I had it such that you could take the top off and everything else. That was pretty neat. I thought having to take the top off, then one day somehow, don't know how I did it, I cracked the top. And I don't know if you can see it or not, but right here, where the mouse is pointing to, is the crack. So how do you bury the crack? Well, I made a rust. And then put an interior in. I put seats in there. I put stuff inside. But I just could not get to the merit score. And people who try to use kits like that one for the AP purposes, it's very difficult to get points because a lot of stuff is already given to you. As, for example, the rivets. The rivets are already on the car. Everything is there. And the thing to get points on anything we're dealing with is the detail that you put into it. If you put individual ribs on there, you put additional details like cut levers. I made cut levers out of a piece of wire. I didn't know what doggone cut was. I had no idea. Going back to what Ken was saying earlier, braking systems. This car right here, when I built it, this is 1865 in Oil City, Pennsylvania, if you will, where some of the first cars hauled oil and such. But this tank car here is an 1865 version. But the thing is, what braking system is supposed to be on there? When I submitted on the first time, I had an AB braking system. And Matt said, you're in the wrong era.
Yeah.
It needs to be K brake. And I didn't have any idea what there's between a K brake, KC brake, ABC brake, whatever. I didn't know the braking systems, but I learned by building the cars. I learned about braking systems like Ken was talking about. So that's just some examples. Now, the other thing, and I don't want to get in depth too far, I've probably gotten too far already, but with the cars, is the fact that 2 of these cars, this one and this one, these are kits, but I already had my 4 merits and had others that had enough points to qualify. I just needed 2 more cars, so I just put 2 kits together, and that gave me my 8 cars. But those are the cars that I had, and just thought I'd share that with you.
Thanks, Ernie.
Dave Ackman here. I'm AP chair of Gateway Division at St. Louis. And the fact that you've got 58 people in your division with at least one AP certificate out of about 220 members, you said, we're about 220. I think I have 20. And one of the things that I'm working with my region and actually with national What is a good number? Is it 10%? You're 26%. I did the math. So I'm kind of impressed with that. So we don't define success within the NMRA. And I wish we were a little better on that. One thing that I have 4 AP certificates. I've got author, volunteer, electrical, and structure. Structure was the most recent. It took me 3 years. But I learned a lot on the way, and I also learned by being taught how to be a judge. Because you find out about cut levers and braking systems and things like that, which I'm probably the worst modeler in the entire room, but I get a joy out of it. But I learned a lot by being a judge because I was taught how to do some things and what to look for, and it's still a lot of fun. I'm just now starting cars. I'm a 3D modeler kind of guy, and I'm going to do everything out of 3D models. It may be a little harder to get merit awards with 3D models, but it's what I enjoy. And the comment about do what you enjoy, at least start with what you're good at and what you enjoy, is very well founded.
And I'll steal back again. When I was with the group in 2002, we got together, said we want to try to go for this MMR thing. We didn't know what it was, but we knew we wanted to do it. There was 10 of us. And the first thing we did was we went for the golden spike, because everybody had a layout, and the golden spike criteria are not that stringent. And as Alex said, and I think Dave would agree, you go for the low-laying fruit, something that's a positive thing for you. From there, we went to chief dispatcher. Bob Rodriguez had a fabulous layout, still has a fabulous layout, that in Montclair. And we were running operation sessions on his layout, and he was keeping track of what people were doing. We didn't have any idea why Bob was doing this, but in the background, after I learned what Bob really does, Bob's thinking about the fact that we can go for chief dispatcher if I record stuff. Even today, he keeps records of what people do on that layout, whether you're working as a hostler or an engineer or dispatcher or whatever. But the chief dispatcher allowed me to learn about timetables. How do you make a timetable? And how do timetables work? And real trains, I see it, but I'm on a HO layout. How do I do this? You start learning about it. You have to measure things and have to do some simulations like, okay, I'm going to run a train through here, see how long it takes. You start to see the steps. And we'll talk more about this when we get into the chief dispatcher clinic later on in this series. The other thing that I learned with that was that, what's dispatching? And who has priority over who? What do you mean passenger gets priority over a freight? I didn't know the rules. And by going through the MMR process and going for chief dispatcher, I had to learn some of those rules. And here I am in 2026 now, and I'm just getting my layout up to par, if you will, to be able to do operations on it. And I'm seeing stuff that I did back in 2002. Wiring, I wish I hadn't done what I did. It's a rat's nest under there. And I've learned, do things neatly. It's easy to troubleshoot that way versus having a bunch of wires trying to figure out which one's which. The last thing I'll throw in is that when you get into the civil, folks think you have to know something about computer-aided drawings, CAD. You have to have a CAD program to make drawings. Alex showed you a picture earlier. It was a sketch.
Yep.
That's all you need. That's all you need right there. And the other thing is that programs such as Word have you be able to put shapes in place. And that's how I made my diagrams when I did my electrical, showing the switches. I just took the pieces and put it together. So it made sense. And it worked out pretty well versus having to go out and buy a CAD program. And CAD programs, I mean, Tinkercad's pretty easy. If you talk to Kurt Thompson, he'll teach you that. But I was trained in Virginia Tech in mechanical drawing, and I did 3/4 of that because I was going to be a civil engineer. Well, thermodynamics came along, kicked me out of there, plus 6/4 calculus. So I went into a degree in building construction. But my background with my parents, my dad was a contractor, built homes, built bridges and such across the state of Pennsylvania. And here I was making drawings for, whatever. No, I'll stop there. I could go on and on.
You make
I'm not gonna do that.
You make a good point, Ernie, and it's something that Martin has stressed and might want to add to. Never read more into the AP requirements than is there. Your example of doing a CAD drawing of your layout versus a hand-drawn thing is a good example. It doesn't specify that you have to have a perfect draftsman's rendering of your layout. Martin, do you want to add to that?
No, that's a good point. Something I was going to get to eventually in the coming months, but that goes into that mythology. People extrapolate stuff that's not in the rules, in the specifications, in the requirements. They read stuff in between the lines that doesn't exist, and if it's not there, hey, guess what? It doesn't exist. And people that interpret stuff that's not there. I'll get some specific examples when I do my presentation on the paperwork and such, but there are a few things which I have pushed back on people for 20 years because no, what you're saying isn't right because it's not written down anywhere. It's not in any rules or specifications. Yet at every level of the NMRA, I've heard this one thing told to me, and I just look at them and say, where did you get that information? Where did you read that? And they can't produce anything. It doesn't exist. It's one of those things that's been passed around, and if enough people say it enough times, it becomes real. That's a misquote of a misquote, but that's one of the things that you have to push back against, but don't inflict it on yourself. You have a question about something, it's on the webpage for every category. And if you're not sure what something means, well, that's what my job is, to help you figure that out. And if I don't know what it means, I ask the next guy up, who asks the next guy up, and eventually we'll get an answer. Usually, there are times where it seems to get lost in the vapor, but generally it's, don't read stuff into this whole process that's not there. Don't make this harder on yourselves. And that's one of the things. There's a lot of rumor, a lot of talk, a lot of stuff. Everybody says, oh, I heard you had to do this. Well, that's great. You heard it. Is any of that true? Probably not. And
if in doubt, ask someone.
Yeah. Well,
ask your AP
just
coordinator. Yeah.
Just don't blindly believe what everybody tells you. It's like, well, go look it up for yourself. And if you don't understand it, that's, there's an AP coordinator in every division, or there's supposed to be. There's certainly supposed to be one in every region. Ask them for clarification. What is this? Is this really true? Or do I need to do this? Or I've been told this, but I can't find any information on it. Get it straightened out. Don't worry about it. Get the straight information. Don't get misled. And don't mislead yourself. That's the worst.
Good points, Martin.
Dave here again. One thing that I fight all the time is people don't want to fill out Form 902, which is the one where you give all the details about construction and all that. And I'm 77, and I don't want to write anything by hand anymore, but I was a computer scientist.
Yeah.
So I took the form and I turned it into a PDF, and I can type it now, and I can do it in 8-point type, so I can get enough in there. And I make that available to the guys in my division.
Well, about, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, Fred Miller in our region took all those forms and converted them into Word documents, which are fillable. And, you know, I actually tell people to use that form instead of the other stupid form. We have a lot of stupid forms for stupid people. I guess that's the way the government works. So that's the way the NMRA works. But I like that form. It's actually the contest judging form.
Yes.
But it's not the AP form necessarily. But I like the contest form. I'm going to be talking about that later in the future, because it has enough cues in it to direct you to think about stuff, little boxes to check, and things. It helps you gather your thoughts as to what you want to write down. And I just tell, there's a little box to fill in. Well, of all your text. Well, in the Word document, it's expandable. The more you type, the bigger the box gets. I also tell people anything over 5 pages and you're way overboard. I don't want to read that.
Very true. And that's why being a judge helps so much.
Yeah.
Because you see the matrix and you try to read 14 pages.
No,
and
you don't have the time for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I taught the judging procedures for a decade for our region, you got 10, 15 minutes in the contest room. You don't have time to read. People will come in with 3-inch thick binders on documentation on their model. Like, nobody's going to read that. I mean, it makes you feel good. Great. Put it in a 3-inch binder, but nobody's going to read it. What I want to find is in the first 5 pages, and I'm not looking past that unless if I have to, you're making me work too hard. And that means you've worked too hard. You don't need to do that. There's 5 categories. If it takes more than a page for each category, you're probably writing too much.
One page per category. 1 page per category, and generally about 14 to 16 point type with a picture.
I was going to say, if there's a prototype photo, okay, so you add an extra page.
Yeah.
Or 2, or you need some photos to explain why you did something. Great. Put those in. Don't give me 50 pages, because I'm not going to spend the time to look through it, and you're just drowning everybody. Alex, going back to Alex.
Yeah, just that makes a great deal of sense, particularly if you're dealing with a contest room.
Yeah.
And you're evaluating it. I must admit, and it's just not that I'm verbose and a writer, but when I submitted my prototype model to be judged for its prototype model certificate, and this was during COVID, and I ended up submitting a 60-page document because I had to detail how I built the required scratch-built structures, the base scenery, the cars that were on it, and provide the archival photos that I used in making it. Now, that if you have the leisure, I imagine that you would, on an individual basis, there's a little more leeway when you've got time to evaluate a model or a project like a diorama. But for contests, that's certainly
yeah, it's nice to, but even then, I doubt that the people who evaluated it read all 60 pages.
Well, I did send them PDFs in color.
I know, but I don't know if they actually read them.
I got
you're looking for the check. They're like, where are the critical elements? Show me where all the requirements are. I'm checking them off. Okay, requirements met. Keep moving.
Well, I may actually end up publishing the Master Builder prototype model diorama description as a small booklet. So
yeah, there you go. Yeah, perfectly.
Yeah. Anything else, Ernie, or shall we? Do you want to announce the next clinic in the series?
I've got that. But one other thing I wanted to say was, when you start this process, you need a plan. What I'm going to do first, and where I'm going to go from here. So you sort of have a way of setting goals and be able to meet your goals and have success. If you don't have a plan, you can get lost. And like I say, started with the easy graph stuff. Author, for an example, for me was the last one I did. But I could say author was the easiest one for me because I've written so many articles that have been in the flyer and in the Regents newsletter that I was there. And I also, as part of that, learned how to establish a website and make a website about my layout. And that can get you points. So there's a lot of things there, and you just have to look at the plan and how you're going to do it. Upcoming, yeah, I got it here somewhere. Where did I put it? There we go. Okay, so upcoming clinics that we have. The next clinic for the Potomac Division is going to be setting up a signaling system by Brian Kidd, and he has a maximum of 6 people get into that clinic. It's on his layout, and it's part 2, if you will. They had part 1 last month. That's on the 25th of April. Then on the 17th of March, Martin is going to talk about the Golden Spike and AP paperwork. And on the 23rd, we have our annual meeting and there we'll have the structures and scenery, and Greg Cassidy and Lee Stormer are going to cover those categories. We basically have at least a clinic a month, and I think our last clinic is, I believe, November. In November, we're going to wrap everything up and sort of do a recap of what we've done. But I'm hoping to that these clinics will be successful and encourage people to get into the AP program. I think the last number I saw was it 817, 818? And 818, I think, was it's either 818 or 816 that Bill Ladders just got last month. And I'm back at in the 600s. So there's been a lot of MMRs in that time frame since 2019, but still 818 out of 30,000 people allegedly that we have in the NMRA. And it's a small percentage. And I'll say maybe the AP program isn't for everybody, but you could start and do something that you enjoy and go for the certificate in that area. There's what, 14 of them, Alex? Am I correct?
11.
11, I'm sorry. And the other thing is, and Martin can back me up on this, I think that the AP requirements are changing. I think they're actually getting easier. I look back to the electrical and civil. I know it's a little bit easier now than it was when I went through it back in 2009, 2010 timeframe. But there is attention to that being done, and they're updating the material, which needs to be done because things are changing. 3D printing. David talked about that. 3D printing was never even thought about when these standards were established back in whenever it was. But you can get points for doing things in 3D.
Oh yeah.
Printing. You just can't use Dave's file and print it. That's not going to get it. But if you're involved in making it, in making the file that creates the piece you're making, certainly you can get points there. And we never thought about other things like that. I mean, things are changing so much today in terms of the technology and all that, I think it's getting easier, and there's additional things that are coming into place that are being looked at, possible future certificates in the AP program. So,
Ernie, if I might, when we start doing this further on, one thing I have trouble with is super detailing. How much is enough? What is a good thing? So whoever does that part of the presentation, let them know I'm interested in that. And then an invitation. I'm teaching at National on 3D printing of round things, and which, well, you don't see much of that. But I'm starting off with my first car is going to be a tank car. and I'm doing it in Tinkercad. And if you know a few things, it can be done. So come to my clinic at National on Tuesday morning and Wednesday morning.
Beautiful Chattanooga. I will be there. Yes, sir.
Yeah, they're making modifications. The other one that caught my eye, although I don't have any myself, is that for structures now, they will allow flats, building flats that more and more people are using on narrower layouts as background buildings. There is to close from my end, there's a little factoid that I like to recite that might inspire you, and that is that more than 5,000 people have reached the summit of Mount Everest. 5,000. And only just over 800 people have become master model railroaders. Now, how about that? Huh? Something to strive for that doesn't require as much oxygen.
Okay.
Before we
go ahead.
no, before we go, I'm Steve Landry. I'm from the Piedmont division down in the Metro Atlanta. I just want to say thank you for the most of you being from the Potomac division for opening this up. Just to give you feedback, I heard about this from that e-bulletin that Gordy put out a couple of months ago. So I just want to give you that feedback. That's why I'm here, and that's how I found out about it. And again, to say thank you for opening it up. I appreciate it. You know, Alex, your slides that you were going to about you know, about the hobby and using every opportunity possible to get more information. You know, attending clinics, going to shows, home shows, and open houses and things like that. I mean, this is just one more of them. I'm relatively new to the hobby. It's been only about 3 years. I would say 3 years ago I got into it, and I really didn't even know what the NMRA was. Never mind the MMR program. So again, venues like this are very, very valuable for me to listen and learn more. So again, thank you. I appreciate you opening it up and advertising it.
Thank you. And you can pass along that this clinic will eventually be up on our YouTube channel.
Okay.
So that others who were perhaps enjoying the fine day or the final round of the Masters tournament can watch it at their leisure.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you for joining us.
No, I
And
appreciate
please
it.
spread the word. Spread the word.
Oh yeah.
The link on our website has all the links for all the future clinics. It's all there on that one place. So we will send out announcements to our division, and I'm trying to copy the divisions that touch us, such as Chesapeake, South Mountain, and all within the MER. So basically, everybody in the MER should be getting an email from me, the superintendents, presidents, whatever they are, that the clinics are taking place. And I'm hoping that they pass along. And that was the intent. We were trying to create something here that was special just to the Potomac Division, but wanted to open it up to all the NMRA for folks because we felt there was a need for the information. It's just like there's so many misunderstandings. And with that, if there's no other questions, I appreciate it. Alex, can you hang tight for a minute after we get done here?
Okie doke.
Okay, so with that, y'all have a great day. Thank you for coming, and we'll see you at the next one. Take
Thank you,
care.
guys.
Stay healthy.
Thank you.